Well, good morning, church. Good morning. I'm excited to be in church this Sunday morning. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Beth Miller, and I am the children's and family pastor here at Life Church Buffalo. And I just wanted to say welcome to everyone today. And before I go any further, I just wanted to take a moment of our service to say thank you to our veterans. For those of you who have committed your life to service to our country, I just want to say thank you for your service. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We are in week 2 of the problem of God, and I have the fun topic of faith and science. Sounds like a fun Sunday at church, right? Yeah. Our family has been in its own recent conversation of faith and science recently. And all around the dinner table, we have 2 daughters. Addison will be 10 years old this month. McKenna will be 13 next month. We've got a 4th and a 7th grader. Wow, that's a big year for my family. A 10-year-old and a 13-year-old. I feel like I should take a moment of silence for how did this happen? How did this happen? My daughter, she's in middle school, and she's going through this season at school of like health class and human anatomy. And our conversations, she's always studying, and like dinner table, she will talk about the things that she's studying so that she's constantly reviewing. You should hear our dinner table conversations as of late in the Miller household. The things that she is studying, she's labeling all of the parts. All of the parts. It's true. All of the parts. She lets us know that she's preparing for a quiz on she says that she's preparing for a quiz on the Gentiles. The Gentiles. If you grew up in church, that's really funny to you. Jesus came not only to save the Jews, but also the Gentiles. We're all Gentiles. The Jews. It's our own little faith and science conversation in the Miller household. It's true. It's true. It's pretty funny. Honestly, preparing for this subject, it's been really challenging. The topic of faith or science is so huge. It's broad. My first message that I prepared when I put all of my content together, it was about 4 weeks long. So I hope that you guys brought like a Subway footlong today, that you have snacks. Someone said that they were bringing popcorn today. This is a huge conversation. And in the next 30 minutes, I'm going to debunk all of faith and science, right? I'm just going to lay it all out in 35 minutes, solve the great problem, the great crisis of it. It's a challenge. And in preparing, I'm trying to picture who will be with us today, who's sitting in our seats, or who will one day be listening in the future on a podcast. Or maybe you get a link in YouTube. Maybe you know of someone that you've been inviting. You're like, I want you to come to this week on the problem of faith and science. And so and they weren't able to come. And so you're sending them the link in the future. Who is with us today? Maybe you're a guest and you're like, okay, I'm coming to this service today. Who is with us today? People who are listening. We have people of faith who embrace the scientific community. That's great. We have people of faith who maybe address the scientific community like this. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's someone you know. Does it sound something like this? I didn't come from no apes. Heard that? Yeah, that's what it sounds like. We have people possibly who are in the science camp, because when they say, like, if I were to embrace faith, if I were to say that, the people who represent faith, you say that you believe in that and that kind of God, but then I see this, the hypocrisy of it. I'm going to just say no to faith. I'm just going to stick with camp science over here. Or maybe you're sticking with camp science because of the evil and suffering you see in the world. If I actually were to say that there is a God, then I'm actually acknowledging that there is a God who is all powerful and then lets this happen. I want to encourage you to come back for the next 2 weeks as we do address those very real and heavy topics of hypocrisy and evil and suffering. That's a real issue. Maybe you or someone you know is part of, you're picking the side of science, because honestly, it's just not a way that you grew up. Faith wasn't a part of your lifestyle. 50 years ago, we could say that most people at somewhat were exposed to faith, religion. There was a Bible maybe at your home. Maybe you went to church on a Sunday. You know the basic Bible stories. Everyone kind of knew at least some of it. But there's a whole group of people who it just has not been a part of their life. They grow up in a home where the conversation of God and faith, it's not that they're talking against it. It just isn't a part of their lifestyle. They don't even think in those ways. And then we have people who have grown up in the faith where, every single day of your life, you have been aware of God, his presence. You can try to imagine what it would be like to come from a home where faith isn't represented, where God doesn't have an impact in it. We can try to imagine what it's like for that group of people, but the reality is we really can't understand or put ourselves in someone else's shoes. You can't unknow what you know. And why am I here? The children's and family pastor, who am I? Why did they pick me to have this fun and exciting conversation with us today? I'm the children's and family pastor. What am I going to go do? Get a costume? I'm going to go get some goggles and a white lab coat and pull out a beaker full of vinegar and baking soda and make something explode and call it a day? Is that what we're going to do today? Make it, real fun. Go in peace, That's what we're going to do today. But the reality is yes, I have been involved in family ministry I'm coming up on 20 years. I've been on staff in some capacity for about 20 years now. But my dreams did not always entail ending up being a pastor, being on a stage. I've never been one to pursue the stage, the pulpit, a microphone, a podium. It was never part of my life goals, my dreams, my plans. Actually, I'm a walking science experiment right now. The anxiety, the amount of adrenaline and cortisol that is pumping through my veins at this very moment, what's happening in my body right now, I'm sweating a lot. I can feel the microphone slipping through my hands as we speak. The cortisol is making my heart beat at a faster rate, and it's making me want to breathe more, but I have to concentrate on trying to talk slower and breathe at a more regulated rate so you guys can actually listen to me right now. This is not something that I ever thought that I would be doing. Actually, years ago, my plans were to become a doctor. Wanted to be a doctor or a dentist. Those were my plans. I love science. I actually can remember the very first image of a cell. I was in middle school and it just fascinated me. And my plan was to be a doctor or a dentist, something in the medical field. I dreamed of white coats in busy hospitals or a doctor's office. I went to the Ohio State University. I'm a Buckeye through and through. I'm an alumni, OHIO, go Buckeyes. And so I went there. That's where I was planning on pursuing my career. And Ohio State does not have programs like pre-med, pre-dental, pre-law, those kind of things. You have to pick a program that fulfills all of your graduate study requirements. And so I knew I was going to pick a science that would fulfill all of my requirements. And I wanted to stick with biology. Biology is half plant, half animal. People are they're animals, and so I was going to go the animal route so I could just be in a lab dissecting things, studying that. And so I have a zoology degree. I'm a proud owner of a zoology degree from the Ohio State University. God had other plans for me. He closed certain doors. I got to say, though, that I graduated with a 3.9. I'm intelligent. I'm smart. Oh, thank you. Someone clapped for me. I thought for certain I was getting into whatever program that I applied to. God, certain doors closed. God changed my path. He opened up new doors and sent me in other directions that I had to walk through. Lots of other things. So here I am on this stage. I have a zoology degree, and I am a children's pastor. It's basically the same thing, guys. It's basically the same. It's basically the same thing. No, but I do. I love what I do. I love being here. sweating and all, breathing very heavy and all. But we're here today. I'm excited to talk about this with you guys, and I understand. So we have all different kinds of people, and all different kinds of people have all different kinds of problems with God. We have Christians who have problems with God. We have atheists who have a problem with the idea of God. Agnostics aren't sure. They just really won't chime in on it, which is fine. Different religions disagree about God. How do you solve this? And if you're new to church, you're new to today, you're listening online, you're new to the whole idea of faith or Christianity, maybe you've thought this in the past, that when you come to church, that you have to park your brain at the door, that you pull up and you leave it out there and you come in and, okay, I'm going to do this faith thing. Or maybe you grew up in a faith that you felt it was taught to you that, we only have faith and we only believe, and you just don't ask questions. Don't ask that. We don't ask questions. But I think that Christianity can withstand the best questions that we throw at it. I honestly do. I do. So I'm going to lay some groundwork for today. The first thing that I want to say is that I believe that everyone has a belief system. Everybody has a belief system. So today, as we're talking about faith or science, I'm going to say that everyone has a belief system, and a definition of faith in the dictionary says that faith is a trust or confidence in someone or something. So everyone has a belief system. It's just the nature of the way, the gap of what we know and what we choose to believe. It's just how it works out. We have some brilliant minds out there. We have intelligent people, but there isn't anyone who knows everything. No one is all-knowing. So no matter where you park yourself, there has to be a faith element to it. You have a belief system. Agnostics and atheists have a belief system. Christianity is a faith system. Orthodox Judaism and Hinduism and Buddhism and whatever spirituality that you invented last month because it just felt right. You felt that there was something a little bit more. It's a belief system. When it comes to science, this topic in the next few minutes that I have with you is so huge. From biology to chemistry and astronomy and cosmology and physics, it's huge and it covers so much, so much. I want to address a couple of the preconceptions that I think that people have or perceptions that they have about Christians that I kind of want to debunk before I get into any further. 3 myths. I'm sure that there's more, but I just want to address 3 myths first. Widely held perceptions. Number 1, that Christianity is anti-intellectual. Number 2, that science is objective and faith is subjective. And number 3, that if I believe in science, that I can't believe in God. That I can't believe in God. So the first one is that we think possibly that Christianity is anti-intellectual. It's not shocking, or I'm not just saying that. Even if you were to turn on the television or on media, how they portray what a Christian is like, they typically don't present him to be like the most intelligent, smart, educated people. They're very... they're missing a few things up there. They're just not that smart. I'm picturing in the Big Bang show, Sheldon Cooper's mom, like how they portray how they portray her. We're usually just not presented, as intelligent people. But I'm just going to say today that that's just not true. It's simply not true. You don't have to park your brain at the door. Did you know that the university is a 12th century Christian invention? That higher thought and faith have historically been intertwined and not uncoupled? That some of the most brilliant minds in history have ended up on the side of faith. I'm not saying that if you are brilliant, you will end up on the side of faith. There are some brilliant people who have not ended up on the side of faith. But to say that you can't be smart and love Jesus or have a faith, it's just not true. Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Dartmouth, and Brown all began as Christian institutions. And I believe that the engagement of the mind often will lead us to a faith in Christianity. Jesus said in Matthew's the first book of our New Testament, This is something he actually told all of us. In Matthew 22:37, Jesus replied, "You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind." He requires us to engage our mind in this. This isn't just a feeling, an emotional response, something that we feel with our heart. Oh, I just feel it right now. He compels us to engage our mind in this, to love him with our mind, to uncover more truth about him, to learn about him. He engages our mind. The second perception that I kind of want to debunk is science is objective and faith is subjective. Maybe it's you, maybe it's someone you know, that the response is, the reason why I want to hold on to this is what I believe is science is fact, it's concrete, whatever you test it again, it comes back again, it is solid, it's there, it withstands and withholds up to the scientific method. I can perform experiments on it. It's something that I can hold on to. It's real. That it's objective, and faith is just a little bit too subjective to me. But I'm going to actually say that there's a little bit of both in both for the science and faith communities. Evolutionary biology and the theory of it attempts to explain observable but sometimes unrepeatable data. And we can study the Big Bang and all of the amount of research that has come from it, but the truth is that we can't go back in time to that and reproduce that same event, that we can't go back into the Precambrian era. We can look at our fossil records to see when that moment when our fossil records are filled with all new kinds of organisms and animals and plants, and it just exploded. And we can't go back in time. We have so much evidence and data, and it's fascinating. But it's the same reason then, even within the scientific community, if you're reading in a scientific journal or you're watching something, whatever it may be, and there may be a scientist who say, well, I feel, when I look at the research, when I collect the data, this is my interpretation of it. And another scientist will say, well, actually, I feel, I look at this research, and this is what I actually believe happened. There's different viewpoints. I'm not saying that any of it is right or wrong. That is not my stance of what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying that for both the scientific and the faith community, that they are both subjective elements to it. Both of it. Sometimes our science can move us towards God. For some, science has moved others away from God. But both of them, faith and science, have subjective elements. It's not completely concrete 100% in every area. And the last one I wanted to address, the myth, is that if I believe in science, that I can't believe in God. Or if I believe in God, I can't embrace the scientific community. I don't know if maybe you're in high school or you have a high schooler or you've gone to college or university. And I know that feeling, like you're sitting in class and your teacher, your professor is saying something and you're like, ooh, what do I do with that? Maybe you were on Reddit or you deep Googled something. You get lost in TED Talks. I could just listen to them keep on going, and you hear something, you're like, ooh, what do I do with that? Oh no, if I'm questioning that, does that mean that it means I gotta give up on my faith? I can't believe in God anymore. I guess I have to go all this way. A lot of us think that it's science versus faith. What if it's science and faith? What if it's science and faith? Science has actually led researchers, it's led them towards Christianity as much as it's led them away from Christianity. I wanted to share a poll that a scientific community performed on themselves. This isn't from a religious company or an organization, a group of pastors were like, let me ask scientists this question. No, this is a peer review from themselves. I wish it was a little bit more current. This is from 2009, but the American Association for the Advancement of Science, they actually showed that 51% of scientists believe in some form of a deity or a higher power. It was actually higher for the sciences like biology, chemistry, physics, astronomy, and cosmology. It was significantly lower in the social sciences like evolutionary psychology and different things like that. But overall, it leveled out to be 51%. 31% in the scientific community actually believe in a personal God, not just a higher power. And 7% don't know. They won't comment on it. They don't know. So that actually shows us that atheists in our scientific community is in the minority. I just think that is interesting, that this is not a religious study that I'm trying to show everyone that, if you came in today and it was like, oh, so what's this pastor going to say? This is from the scientific community, a poll of their own community. So the bottom line after all of those myths is that fact-based science is not perpetually at war with a faith-based religion. It's not science or faith. It can be science and faith. And I believe that science is revealing what God did. That science is revealing what God did. Now, science does also have some limits to it. Scientists will tell you that. We want it to answer everything. It's why we find comfort in science and the solid facts that it produces. I think it's interesting when you study physics and the precise calculations that our universe is held together by very delicate measurements. That if something is off by 10 to the 138th power, like we would cease to exist. And we can figure out all of these calculations, but then to ask a physicist, why is it like that? Where did that come from? That's a metaphysics question, and they can't answer that. So there are some limits. And this isn't me saying this. It's coming from a scientific community. I don't know if you've ever heard of has anyone ever told you this before, like science proves that there is no God. Come on, let's just put it back. Okay. Stephen Jay Gould is a famous evolutionary biologist from Harvard. He's an atheist. He's not a Christian that I'm quoting, but he was so frustrated with people in his own scientific community who would try to say that science can address this topic. Like, it's a faith or science kind of a thing. And he's very frustrated. You can hear the tone in this quote. And he says, "To say it for my colleagues and for the umpteenth millionth time, science simply cannot adjudicate the issue of God's possible superintendence of nature. We neither affirm or deny it. We simply cannot comment on it as scientists." Interesting. There's another scientist, his name is Alan Rex Sandage. He's an astronomer who was the successor to Edwin Hubble, if you're familiar with the Hubble telescope. And he is known as the greatest cosmologist of the 20th century. This man is brilliant. He passed in the last 10 years or so. He is smart. He's respected around the world. And he's quoted as saying this: "It is my science that drove me to the conclusion that this world is much more complicated than can be explained by science." He said, "I can't get all my answers from science." He did not start out life as a Christian, but the deeper that he got into astronomy and the universe and how it was all created or came together, in his 50s, he placed his faith in Jesus. Science shouldn't kill our faith. It should spark it. It should spark it. For me, I had a hard time coming up with what is it that I want to share? How did it spark my faith? I have so many different stories of things that I've discovered or in my own personal learning time, or if I was in a lecture and something, how did it spark for me? And I'm going to give an example. I was in an evolutionary biology class. Yes, your pastor is going to use an evolutionary biology story to say how it sparked my faith. It was one of my favorite classes. It fascinated me. And there I was, and I'm hearing all about Charles Darwin and heading over to the Galapagos Islands. Some of the science may go way over you. I just ask that you just don't walk out right now and be like, oh my gosh, this is whatever. But how it changed and grew my faith. There's Charles Darwin, and he's heading over to the Galapagos Islands. These are islands that have come up from volcanic workings underneath the ocean. These are islands that have plants and animals and things on it that you can't find anywhere else on the planet. They only exist there, and he was fascinated with the research there, studying the animals and the plant life that you could only find there. And what he had found was he's decided to study this group of birds. If any of you are familiar with Darwin's finches. So he has this group of birds, and so there's a big group of birds, but he realized that they were separated into, there would be some birds that had a beak that was perfect for piercing a hole in a cactus so it could get certain food. Or that this beak was perfect for cracking these kind of seeds and feeding themselves. And you would find that these finches, although that they were part of one group, all had then individual new species of birds that they wouldn't mix, they wouldn't intermingle, they wouldn't breed together, but they were their own new breed of finches. And at this time also, I'm also in genetics classes, and I'm learning about genetically modified organisms, and it fascinated me to be studying chromosomes and DNA and alleles and recessive and dominant traits, like what shows up on our genes that's a dominant trait for what you look like. What size nose do you have? What color eyes do you have? All of that. And scientists have figured out how to modify DNA, okay? So it's how we even, if some of you are familiar with, you don't want to eat no GMOs in your produce or your food, if anyone's familiar with that. Like, oh, no GMOs. I don't want to eat a GMO produce, something like that. So scientists have modified the gene where this tomato plant can now make more tomatoes and larger tomatoes. You know, however many years ago, a strawberry plant looked like this, but a scientist has figured out how to make strawberries bigger and make more. Or this corn plant used to make 5 ears of corn, and now it makes 45 ears of corn. That they did all of that. And so all of these classes together, and I'm studying to figure it out. And I can't help but think of this verse as well. Matthew 6:26, Jesus says, "Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they?" When I combined it all together, and I was figuring out and learning what scientists have been able to do, that they've like cracked the code of these genes and chromosomes and what it is. At first I thought to myself, there's no way that scientists have figured something out that God didn't know about as well. Like if I say I have faith in a God, that God's not going like, oh my gosh, what did they figure out on that chromosome? Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. What are they doing down there? Man, they just taught me something new. No. But there he was when I'm like putting this all together and hearing how that happened, that there is a mutation to a gene. We all have to say that we understand that mutations to genes happen. We can even see it in sickness, and there's cancer. It's a mutation to a gene. Sometimes mutations could be beneficial, and it changed the shape of a beak or whatever it may be, that I thought to myself, my God is a problem-solving God. He is a problem-solving God. And if my God is a creator, and part of his nature is that our God is unchanging. He is unchanging. That he's not held to the confines of like, okay, so I created that back in 6 days. I just can't create anymore. Nope, I can't do it anymore. Our God is a creator. And so when I heard that, I understand that for sometimes you'll hear something and be like, man, what did that do to my faith? Oh, what do I do with that? For me, it sparked my faith and made my God even bigger. My God is a creator who is a problem solver. How many times do we go to God and we think like, I have this sickness, I have this problem. And when I go to him, I'm already thinking of his options. He can either do this, he can either do this, he can either do this. These are the three things he has to do. And our God is so outside of that. He's a problem-solving God. He's like, you think that that's what I have to do? Look what I'm going to do. My science sparked my faith. He grew even bigger. He grew even bigger. In the same In the same science in evolutionary biology that I even just quoted as something that it sparked my faith, evolutionary biologists, they follow a naturalism viewpoint. Everything is based off of the 4 F's, feeding, fleeting, fighting, and fitness. If you've ever heard survival of the fittest, it's actually not the strongest. Fitness is a reproductive rate. Who can make the most babies? Like, how can you pass your genes on to the next generation that has the most impact in things? And so everything is built around those 4 things. And what they say is that religion, this truth that we have, we made it up. We made it up. It makes us feel good. And evolutionary theory suggests that religion is an aberration, that we invented it to help us survive. But here's the thing. So they're saying that truth takes a back seat to survival. That's what they say. And religion, therefore, it's just made up. It's fake. It makes us feel good. It's helped us survive. But eventually we'll get to a place where it doesn't mean anything. But here's the flaw in that very viewpoint, that thought right there. If you can't trust your rational faculties to tell you the truth about God, so if you can't trust the brain that I have because it's not helping in the 4 F's, if I can't trust my brain to tell me the truth about God, then you can't trust your rational faculties to tell you the truth about science or evolutionary theory either. It goes both ways. You can't say it for one and not the other. It's a truth factor. Mitch Stokes is a scientist who says it way better than I can. He has a PhD and a master's of science and engineering. And he says this. It's a long quote. And I'd love for you to follow along, because in it I was like, oh my gosh. Wow. Atheists have a reason to doubt whether evolution would result in cognitive faculties that produce mostly true beliefs. If so, then they have a reason to withhold judgment on the reliability of their own cognitive faculties. And this ignorance would, if atheists are consistent, spread to all of their other beliefs, including atheism and evolution. Atheists who believe the standard evolutionary story must reserve judgment about whether any of their beliefs produced by these faculties are true. Believing in unguided evolution comes built in with its very own reason not to believe it. Mitch Stokes. You know who else is someone who was worried about this? This is kind of fascinating. Charles Darwin is quoted as saying this. He said, "Within me, the horrid doubt always arises whether the convictions of a man's mind, which has been developed from the mind of lower animals, are of any value or at all trustworthy." If I really believed that I came from that thing that I said I did, that I can't believe what I'm saying. What has science done for you? If I replace the word science, creation, our world, the universe, the place that we live in, you're surrounded by it. You can say science, it's just not my thing. You're surrounded by it. It's a part of everything. What has it done for you? And science for me has sparked my faith. Today, as I come to a close, I want us to leave with the idea that it's not faith or science, that it's faith and science. That science helps us to understand the how, but I believe that faith helps us to understand the who and the why. That science isn't at war with faith, and that science reveals the hand and the heart of God. So what do I want us to take away today? Maybe today wasn't your cup of tea, but I still have something that I want to leave everyone with. Whether you're listening online, on a podcast at a future date, maybe you're going to pass this along to someone. Maybe you're with us for the first time because someone invited you because it was a science week. What do I want you to do if you are in the science camp, that you're saying, I'm team science. That's where I find myself. That if you are picking that because of possible hypocrisy that you see within people who declare that they have a faith, or the coming to terms with evil and suffering, I want to challenge you to make it a priority to be here the next 2 weeks. That you owe it to yourself that much. Can I just come back for the next 2 weeks to hear how do we kind of put these two together? But if you're in the science camp because it's just either how your research, wherever you found yourself, how you raised it, that's where you're at. I have like a test I want to give you, a challenge for each of you, like an experiment. Now, you'll never be able to do an experiment on God to say, like, if you're really there, God, turn on and off the light and I'll finally believe. I wish that we could do certain things of like, I can test this, weigh this, perform this scientific method, and I've got the answer. But Thomas Edison had 1,000 failed attempts at turning on a light bulb. So I want to challenge you to do this. He stuck with it. I'm going to challenge you to do this, maybe for a month. Maybe it's 100 days. Maybe it's 1,000, like Thomas Edison. And I want you to say this: God, if you are real, make yourself real to me. Awaken in me the possibility that with you I could start over again. Just take that little step. That little step. Maybe for the first time ever, you have just a little crack in that exterior and you feel just a little, is that faith? Do I have a hope right there? Maybe it's just a little bit. What do I do with that little bit? There's a man who came to Jesus, and we find the story in the book of Mark. And he had just a little bit of faith. He came to him, he had a sick son. And Jesus said to him, if you can believe, all of these things are possible to him who believes. Immediately the father of the child cried out and said with tears, Lord, I believe, but can you help my unbelief? Maybe you're filled with a lot of unbelief, but there's just a little bit there. Can you maybe say that? Lord, I believe, but can you help my unbelief? That's my challenge for you. But if you have a faith in Jesus, that maybe you're a little bit of both, your faith and science, and science has sparked your faith. I have a couple things that I want to leave you with today. Is that the next time that you possibly are in a fight with someone, really it's not a conversation that's open to debate. It's an argument. It's a fight. It's possibly insulting. I want you to remember that person that you are arguing with, that person is one of God's most precious creations. You who say that you are in awe of all that God has done, that very person who is still yet denying him, he loves them. He adores them. He sent his son to die for that very person. I want to challenge us that we're a group of people, that we are Christ followers who lace our words in grace and love and respect, that we do speak the truth, but that we're not mean to people. They are one of God's most precious creations. This is all on God. He's after them. He's pursuing them. Guys, let's be people who remember that the people around us, the people that we come in contact with, the people that we're fighting with, we're trying to win over to our side, He loves them. I also want science or this world. I want it to spark your worship. I want it to spark your faith. I want you to walk out into the world and I want you to see the sky that He painted, that this God who created by His hand chiseled out mountains, who has the ability, if you study what an atom looks like, and there's electron orbitals and they're floating around, protons and neutrons. He has the ability to hold that and keep everything in perfect order. He created pine needles and hydrogen atoms This God that we think that we can just, I come in on a Sunday to worship. That song really wasn't my style. The God of the universe is before us. How do we worship? How do we look at him with awe and wonder? Are we looking at him with awe and wonder on a Tuesday? Do we walk out and look at the sky and say, God, thank you. He's painting you pictures. He is worthy of our adoration and our awe and our worship. But would this world also spark your faith? Would your idea of your God, we can't even fathom how all-powerful and huge and big he is. Would it grow your faith? What problem are you facing? Maybe that you're struggling with something right now and you're limited to what even God could do. Our God is a problem-solving God. I want you to leave today with a bigger picture of your God. He is bigger than you can fathom, and he's on your side. He is a creator and a problem-solving God. Psalms 19:1 says, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the skies proclaim the work of his hands. Jeremiah 37:7 says, I am the Lord, the God of all mankind. Is there anything too hard for me? Is there anything too hard for me? There's nothing too hard. I hope you guys have a bigger picture of our God. And the last thing that I also want you to get a picture of, the picture of this world and this universe. And scientists say that our universe is expanding at infinite rates. It just keeps going and going and going. If you have ever struggled with the weight of your own sin that possibly separates you from God, and you think like, what do I do with this? And maybe you've said sorry or you've repented and you just feel the shame of it. Maybe today for the first time you started to let faith creep in just a little bit and you can feel like, what have I done? What are the things that I've done? God's word says that in Psalms 103:12, as far as the east is from the west, so far has he removed our transgressions from us. You get a picture of our universe and how vast it is. Our God doesn't just kind of smear or cover up a sin and be like, there it is. As far as the east is from the west, we can't fathom the size of it, but he removes our sin. It is gone like it was never there. And he looks at us like his precious creation. As far as the east is from the west. If you're walking around still carrying baggage of things that you just thought like, well, I've said sorry. I just feel gross. Man, I have messed up. You don't know the things that I've done. What is it? It's gone. As far as the east is from the west, and you can walk in confidence to Jesus for what he has done for you. I hope today that you have a bigger picture of your God. He's a big God who has big love for us. I'd love to pray for us, church. Dear God, I just thank you for this time together. Thank you for every person that is here. God, we stand before you, the creator of everything. And God, I just pray that our idea of you is even bigger. We cannot fathom who you are, how big and powerful you are. But God, you love us. You are with us in the midst of everything. God, I pray for any person here today who has never placed their faith in you. Maybe they're just now starting to think like, what do I do with this? God, I pray that you pursue them. God, I pray for protection of their hearts. God, would they have eyes to see you? Would they have a heart to be receptive to you? Would they have ears to hear your whisper? God, I pray for the people in our life who are struggling with this. Maybe it's a daughter or a son. Maybe it's a spouse. Maybe it's a best friend. God, would we be people who pursue your creation? God, we love you and thank you for this day. In your name we pray.